Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tate.
Bob Anthony.
I'm Raymond Peterson.
I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer.
And we are here with another edition of Media Watch. We're doing the recording Wednesday before what would be a Monday air date at MNN, but it's definitely going to be up on YouTube. I believe today is
December 6th.
6th.
Yep.
And so we'll try to put some stuff in perspective. As we're doing this, I believe the UN Climate Summit is on its last legs, wrapping up. It hasn't officially ended yet, but it's in its final phases, correct?
Yes, it's been going on for a while. It should be wrapping up as we record, actually.
Right. So the one, I don't know how many good things came, because I saw a lot of headlines about fossil fuel people in the Mideast pushing fossil fuels at a climate change conference.
Yeah.
but my inbox got my representative, Espaillat, hollering the fact that he and the California Democrat in the House had pushed the Biden administration to renew the US's pledge. And what's the figure, guys, that they come up with that Vice President Kamala Harris announced in Dubai? Was it $3 billion? $3 billion.
Yeah. So yes,
in U.S. Request that will go to the House to appropriate. Espaillat says, yeah, they pushed the president, and so the vice president made the announcement, but he also made known the fact that now he's got to get his fellow people in the House to come together and actually appropriate the dollars that the U.S. has promised. So,
a quick question: is this something the Trump administration pushed back against?
Oh yes, Trump
Okay, I
has
thought so.
promised to reverse all climate action taken by the Biden administration.
okay.
And remember, Trump had pulled the United States out of the Paris Climate Accord. Then Biden put the United States back in the accord, and Trump has said, day one, we're out. So,
yeah,
very real problems here. Right. Eric, you commented, the Dubai is sponsoring this conference along with the UN. It's housing it. Dubai set a record this year for fossil fuel production. The other thing is they estimate that there are over 2,500 fossil fuel company lobbyists at the meeting. And one of the things the fossil fuel companies are trying to do is to moderate the criticism of fossil fuel. And part of that is the Dubai delegate, the guy in charge of the conference, was also taped claiming that there's no real evidence that we have to get rid of fossil fuels. So while the conference is vital, a lot of people undermining it.
Yeah, that I saw a report where, I mean, the proverbial hit the fan when his comments were made known, because he'd said it like a week before and it slid on the radar and somebody blew the whistle. And then he spent the next couple of days trying to claim, no, I didn't really say that. Well, yeah, I said it, but it was taken out of context. And my record on trying to phase out fossil fuel is well known. It sounded like talking out of both sides of his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about the United States, unfortunately. This year was the hottest year on record for the globe, for the world. It's also the year that the United States set records for the production of fossil fuels.
Yeah, so we can't point fingers or throw stones at anybody based on our own record. Look, I know for a fact that the generation of my grandkids and the people that, what's the kid from Helsinki or wherever she is, Greta Thunberg, they are actively trying to light a fire under the entire global power structure about the significance of climate change. All these young people understand that it is really an existential threat facing the globe, and all the scientists they say, look, we're at the point of almost no return. But the problem is there's money in fossil fuels, and they can't seem to turn that spigot off. So I don't know what the hope is for the planet. Let me put it this way: the planet would rejuvenate if the planet killed us with climate change. Once man's gone, the planet's going to fix itself.
And it doesn't care what we do.
I think we're the most destructive invasive species.
Yeah.
So we're trying to destroy ourselves, not just with AI, but with climate. So the bottom line is we got a long ways to go and a short time to do it in. And all I can do is keep my fingers crossed and hope these young people can get into power or do something to change the giant ship that doesn't want to change. Anyway, that's gloom and doom news. Not much good news coming out of climate, even though the $3 billion pledge is. And because it's a pledge and we got a recalcitrant House of Representatives, we may never got that money appropriated anyway. Which gives us a good segue, guys. Talk to us about the House. Talk to us about the House and how crazy the House is these days, despite the fact that they were actually able to kick George Santos out. Talk to us.
I mean, go ahead, Ray. You're about to say?
No.
I mean, it's today as we tape, we find out that former Speaker Kevin McCarthy will not be running again for another term. Well, actually, he's going to exit by the end of the year, and so that just adds to the amazing dysfunction that we already have in the House. I don't know why it took this long to get rid of George Santos. To this day, we don't know who the hell George Santos is. Nothing on his resume is correct. I'm not even 100% sure about his name. And then we have the new speaker, Mike Johnson, and his super hardline far-right positions and some of his historical statements. I mean, it's a mess in the House, and there's a lot of people leaving the House. So it's in flux more than I thought it would be at this point.
Has anybody been keeping tabs of how many Republicans and how many Democrats have that they are not going to run for re-election? I saw, interesting note, since we check on media, MSNBC's Jen Psaki on her show, they just started a new section called The Exit Interview. And the thrust of that exit interview for that show is having the people who have just said, I'm leaving Congress, come on and talk about why they're leaving Congress, because there's so many people leaving Congress. And so the Democrat that she had on, I just should have written the name down since I was checking media on stuff that we could be talking about. It was a Democrat who said, look, it's time to move on to the next chapter, per se. And her question directly and bluntly was, is that because of the dysfunction that's going on right now, not just in Washington, but in the House of Representatives? His answer was, that plays a big part in it. My tab so far has been more Republicans announcing that they're not running for election than Democrats, but can anybody cross-check that? but there just seemed to be a rush to leave. And this new speaker, as you said, is a Trump supporter, which means he's an insurrectionist supporter. And so the fact that we have a House of Representatives being run, I think I said this the last show, but I'm repeating myself, being run by an insurrectionist supporter bodes not good for the democracy that we're trying to produce and uphold in this country.
I mean, just think of who started this mess in the House. It was Matt Gaetz. So, we're talk about bottom feeders of all people. He himself and 7 other people managed to get McCarthy out. Actually, it was him and a bunch of other people that managed to get McCarthy in. Plus, and they had to promise to do, McCarthy had to promise to do certain things and change the rules to get his spot. And now, so the mess has been caused by basically the worst section of the House. The folks that we don't want running the country, but here we are. We have Mike Johnson, and we don't. Go ahead, Alan.
But they just keep arguing this is a Christian nation. And I read the Constitution and it never mentions the Christian nation, but that's their argument. And Mike Johnson says he wants to run the country according to the Bible. Now, this is the thing. These people have really sleazy histories, many of them. They're very scary. There's a group in Florida called Moms for Liberty that has been leading the school censorship campaign. And one of the founders, her husband was just arrested, charged with raping a woman. Well, he's the head of the Republican Party in Florida. Well, it turns out that the husband, this woman, and the woman who is the founder of Moms for Liberty and Censorship were having a three-party triad. The fundamental immorality of the people who claim to be moral champions is terrifying. And just right now, Johnson, as the head of the speaker, there's a committee that wants to bring to the table the impeachment of Joe Biden without any evidence, just because they don't like him. There was another hearing where House Republicans were denouncing college presidents for not suppressing freedom of speech on campus and allowing liberals.
I saw parts of that hearing, and because it was just snippets, I shouldn't pass judgment, but the clips that I saw seemed to indicate the Republicans primarily ganging up on all of these college presidents and basically accusing them all of being anti-Semites. Basically, that was the thrust of the hearing, to the point where some of the Democrats had to step in and say, excuse me, you know, it looks like you people are trying to grind axes here, because now you're throwing in all kinds of other pseudo-academic charges against these presidents just to grind your own axe. So I don't know. That's like the hearing supposedly to find evidence to impeach Joe Biden comes up with nothing, but the speaker says we have no choice but to proceed with this debacle because, for what reason? Hunter Biden volunteered to testify before their committee in a public hearing. Okay, this is the guy they're going after, trying to blame his actions on his father. And he said, okay, I'll come talk to you. And their answer was, not in a public hearing. You have to come talk to us behind closed doors. And his answer is, no, because I don't want you spinning my testimony the way you've done for other people. And he's right. And so you can tell this hearing is a sham when they refuse an offer for public testimony before the American people, just so they can run some closed door sham interrogation. That to me is totally anti-democratic and definitely anti, what is it? The Sunshine Law, the Transparency Acts that we keep passing in this country to make sure government is functioning properly. Anyway, speaking of dysfunction in Washington, talk to us, Raymond, about Tommy Tuberville, or Alan, whichever of you guys want to talk about this guy who's been holding up all these military promotions. Tommy Tuberville?
What he wants to talk about.
You want to talk about that? Alan, you talk about Tommy Tuberville. How many
I think
generals?
in 2013, he won College Football Coach of the Year when Auburn was a national champion. And based on that, Alabama sent him to the Senate, where he has singularly blocked promotions for hundreds of American military personnel.
452. Go ahead.
Now, the reality is they were promoted to the job, but not to the title, which meant they were all working at the job. They're just not getting paid. Now, I think Tuberville is getting paid. Maybe, they should have been tit for tat. If they had to work without getting paid, he should have worked without getting paid. But how do we have a system where a football coach from Alabama is able to block a United States Defense Network? I don't get it.
And he did so. Why? He did so because the military had allowed for the availability of abortions.
What it was there's women are stationed in states that have these horrendous abortion laws, and so the military allows them travel allowances to travel out of state to deal with any abortion problem they may have. And he didn't like that. So because the military provided leave so that they could go do what they needed to do on their personal time and their personal life, he was putting a hold on more than 452, because the article I read said as soon as he took the first part of the hold off, they immediately confirmed 452 military individuals whose promotions he had held up for 11 months, if not a year. Okay. And then the footnote on the article was the top 10 or 11 generals that run the bulk of our serious military establishment, the highest ranking guys, he's still sitting on. There's still a hold on 10 more folks in key positions that this crazy, I don't want to use profanity on our own show, but this crazy idiot, this dumb ass who should not even be in the Senate, is sitting on their rights to do their jobs with the proper pay, the proper time in grade. He is screwing with people's lives and their future, and somebody needs to do something about that.
And Alabama is one of the largest recipients of federal dollars for defense contractors. I mean, the whole state is subsidized by the federal government for the defense industry. You know, I don't move it out, close it down.
This is unacceptable. It's really horrendous. But hey, talk about dysfunction in Washington. Yeah, right.
But speaking of Washington, I guess we've lost some notables of late. Who changed the outlook of American history for good or for worse over the last few days.
Good segue, Bob, because there are a couple of people that we definitely need to talk about. We don't have to go in depth because, matter of fact, why don't you kick it off with that Henry Kissinger, Sandra Day O'Connor and Henry Kissinger, two Washington heavyweights that we lost, and then there are a couple of other people we should at least mention. You want to jump in with Sandra Day O'Connor, Raymond?
Sure.
Day O'Connor.
Well, her claim to fame, well, the biggest thing you would notice about her is she was the first woman appointed as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. You also might know her as the woman who gave George W. Bush the election, the Gore-Bush election, which she did reluctantly, I understand. But she stood in the gulf between the right and the left on the court. She was a moderate conservative voice on the court. President Bush had an opportunity to replace Justice Rehnquist when he stepped down, which he obviously put a right-leaning justice on the bench. And Sandra Day O'Connor was going to retire, which would have left two vacancies. She eventually did retire, and then we got Alito. What's his first name?
Samuel
Alito. Yes, Samuel Alito. Which really tipped the balance of the court way to the right.
That was not the centrist jurist that Sandra Day O'Connor was.
No. I mean, she was appalled by she could see what was happening to the court, and thereby the nation as well. And she was appalled by it. Her husband had Alzheimer's disease. She took care of him till the day he died. She even brought him to the office so that he wouldn't be alone. And then she herself developed thyroid cancer, and had intended to resign as a result of this, but she held on because she didn't want to leave that vacancy. She wanted to have someone that she felt was an appropriate candidate. Well, you see what happened.
It didn't turn out that way, but at least the
bottom. But she was a remarkable woman, even though she was a Republican. She was a Republican from the old days where Republicans were still politicians and not whatever these people are.
That want to govern as opposed to want to tear down the country.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, Ray.
I grew up in the 50s is not nothing like what I'm seeing today. It's just insane. You know, I remember when you know, even if you hated a politician, you could trust them to do the right thing. And today, you can't even trust them when they say good morning. You got to look and see if it's night. Anyhow,
I fully agree with you, Ray. When Sandra made a decision, you could actually be have confidence that she actually opened the Constitution.
She made decisions that she didn't believe in, but it was the right thing to do. She followed the letter of the law. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way these jobs are supposed to be handled. And since the redhead got in, the country's gone to hell, and it's still going to hell, and it's going to continue to go to hell because these people are just absolutely batshit crazy.
She defined what it meant to be a conservative justice. She made decisions based on the law narrowly without overturning precedent.
Excuse me, iTunes.app needs your attention.
I beg your pardon?
Somebody's serious.
There's a woman in my apartment.
But the other people that have been appointed are right-wing activists who make decisions based on ideology, not on law. So she will be missed, even though, you know, I disagreed with her on many decisions.
Yeah, I was leery of her appointment, but I have to tell you, based on the ruling she made, sometimes against her own personal beliefs, but because it was, as Ray said, the right interpretation of the law, whether it was a constitutional thing that came before her or whether it was something dealing with human rights, sexuality, because she was big on Title IX to make sure that there was no discriminatory stuff.
ER, you know,
dealt with the law per se, and what was in the best interest of the country. And I got to hand it to her. She was phenomenal. Now, I didn't hear any negative words about Sandra Day O'Connor, see any negative thing anywhere when she passed. Not that they didn't exist. I just didn't see it, didn't hear it. If you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but when Henry Kissinger passed, tell me about the reaction and how that all went down. I know, Bob, you said that was the longest obit you'd seen in years.
Yes,
the New York Times. Real quick.
Well, I mean, you know, when you open a New York Times article on the web, there's a little item up top that says, this is a 3-minute read, this is a 2-minute read. But when you opened up Henry Kissinger's obit, it said it's a 38-minute read. It went on and on and on and on. I mean, it was very, you know, it was encyclopedic. It covered everything from his, you know, his rise to prominence to his, the bombing of Cambodia, you know, which obviously was outside of what we should have been doing, and the, you know, the fact that he was equally loved and vilified. I mean, I'm glad we spent a lot of time on Sandra Day O'Connor today, because she got, you know, when sometimes one obit gets overwhelmed by another. And so I'm glad we spent the time to give her the props. But yeah.
Yeah, there was Alan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a lot of negative stuff that Kissinger was responsible. Bob, you said the bombing of Cambodia. He was also basically in Nixon's ear or whomever's ear when they took down Allende. Okay. Yes. He was.
And again, what happens, again, it's for Henry Kissinger, anything is justified as long as it advances our short-term interest. And so long-term consequences are ignored. So thousands of people are murdered in Chile. And dictatorships around the world get a boost. In Cambodia, the bombing brings down a neutral government, ends up leading to a mass uprising that leads to the genocide of 2 million people. Because,
the regime and the Cambodian genocide. Yes.
Yeah, you just destabilize a country, and that what happens. So, but Kissinger took no responsibility for the consequences of the policies that he agitated for, and that's why he was despicable.
I saw something about Secretary of State Blinken interacting with some politician maybe in Israel while he was over there when Kissinger passed, and there was all this laudatory stuff about Kissinger, and Lincoln had one statement which Henry Kissinger had a significant effect on history in his time. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. He may have said something longer and more laudatory later, but and I lifted that paraphrase. I'm quoting from Heather Cox Richardson, who was dealing with a bunch of issues on her Substack, but that one crossed my inbox, and I remembered that one line from the current Secretary of State had a major impact on historical events.
Yes.
As much as he evidently wanted to say.
It was quite the vanilla statement. I mean, it went nowhere, but I guess that's kind of what he meant. And this is the 2-minute warning, I guess.
Okay. There was a couple of other things that we talked
Well,
about.
you wanted to mention Cobi, Narita, and
the obit that we should have at least mentioned in November was the passing of Cobi Narita, without whom New York's jazz scene for the last 40 years would not have been what it was, because she was a producer, she was a funder, underwriter of people's careers. She had venues where up and coming young artists could perform and jumpstart their career. So the total jazz scene lost a major player, but the New York jazz scene definitely lost one when Cobi Narita passed. So yeah, tips and kudos to her career and what she did for jazz across the globe. And then there's one quick note that I throw out. Rachel Maddow had Liz Cheney on last week, and she had the highest ratings of any cable show the night she had Liz Cheney, even though they're polar opposites politically, but because they both agreed that Trump is a clear and present danger. She had something like 3.5 million viewers talking about what a danger Donald Trump poses to this country. So people are starting to actually pay attention. The message might be slowly getting through. But hey, with that, folks, I think we're about out of time.
Yes.
This has been Media Watch, folks. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. Catch up to us on YouTube at Media Watch EVT.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And I'm Alan Singer, the guest and friend. Thank you for having me tonight.
Actually, I think last show I said, well, Alan Singer's been with us long enough. He's actually a regular. So basically, we've got the logos, we've got the underscore. So yes, thanks.
Yeah, you're no longer our friend, Alan. You're now a member of the cast.
Oh God.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.